Well, it's finally here. It's taken a little while. We've had a few teething issues with the install package, which has meant that the latest version of MemorialDesigner has been a little bit delayed. But it's ready now, and I'm just going to do a quick demo of the various features that we've added in this release, and an explanation as to how you go about making that release. So the first thing that we've done is we've added the ability to view perspective on things like splay bases. This could be extended if people like the idea, and we can extend it to further features. But for the moment, it's just on the splay basis. So if I just bring in a memorial shape, so I'm going to bring in a 2319 OG, and I'm going to remove the base off this memorial. So I'm just going to ungroup the memorial and then delete the base, and we're going to bring in the splay version of that base. So if I go to bases, which is up there, and then we will have, let's just go for a right hand stop base, and I'm just going to make the memorial on the top so it's sitting on top of the base there. So historically we just add text on, so if I add my text here, text on base, and we make that like that. So we would have just put this text in the middle of there, like that. So that's traditionally how I would have displayed it to my customer, and they would have had to have understood that this text is going to go up on this section here. And we've added this button here called Add Perspective. So if I have my text selected and I click Add Perspective, it will then make that text appear as though it's on display. Now that doesn't just apply to text, so it could be anything. If I just delete that and add in a design, so let's just add in a butterfly. We put the butterfly next to our text, and I'm just going to select those two objects together and then click the Add Perspective button, and butterfly will also appear as though it's on the display base. So that's the first new feature that we've added, and as I say, that applies to display bases, but equally if people like the idea, we could extend this and add additional options for where the perspective is going to be added. The next thing that we've been working on is font identification. So I've just picked out two examples of queries that people had on the Facebook page for looking at what fonts we think this is and how you would go about identifying that in the current release. So if we look at this inscription, and I'm just going to select all of that text there. So on the font drop down up here, we have the ability to filter fonts, so reduce the list of fonts. So it may or may not be visible. If you haven't got that panel on the right hand side there visible, just click the filter button and it will become visible. I've now added a whole raft of font folders here which allow us to filter out fonts that I'm not interested in. So we've got a variety of different things. So W centers crossed would be an instance. Well, I'll show you later on actually. So there's various different criteria we've got. So you've first of all got to look at your inscription and work out, well, what do you think is the identifying feature about this font? Bit difficult to see on this rubbing here, but you can see if you look closely that that P doesn't close. So the P is open at this joint here. So rather than the horizontal line joining the vertical stem, there's a gap there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter out just the fonts where the P is center open. If you look on this side, at the moment I've got over 1,000 fonts. If I click P center open, I'm now reduced to a more manageable list of around about 20 to 25 fonts, all of which have an open P at the center. So I can just go through these and work out which one I think is the closest. And it's a relatively straightforward task to do that. Now you can add your own criteria. It just means that you have to add the fonts to that directory as well, and I'll explain how you add those fonts later on. Now in this instance, it's not clear cut exactly what the font is going to be. It's going to be one of the Garamond fonts, I think, and that's probably the closest. that matches this particular inscription. We can see that, for example, the 5 here doesn't identically match the 5 on the original inscription, but the rest of it looks fairly close. The W is not quite the same, but it's not bad, and it's certainly a good starting point to work from. And that's basically what we're trying to do, is try and find something that's close to us. If we have to tweak the odd letter here or there, then we tweak the odd letter here or there. And that's what this process is all about. The one thing that it does do is it does remember what you had. So if you've done a filter, then you need to click clear filters to get your full list back again. The final thing on this front is that this is additive. So if you have, for example, show me all fonts where the 3 has a flat at the top, then it will show you the list of 3s with the flat at the top. If I then say, and the P has a center open, then it will show you 3s that are flat or centers open. It doesn't do this and this, unfortunately, at the moment. So it's not possible to do this and this. So I've now got 3s that are flat or P's that are open. If we just look at another example, so we're now going to go and look at this one. This one's a little bit harder because there's nothing quite so obvious in terms of identifying this particular font. So you can see that there are various options available to us in our font picker. So in our filters list, we've got all these different options, but in this instance, there's not one that jumps out as being an obvious character to look at. The best I could come up with on this one is looking at the letter C, and you can see that this letter C here has a serif that goes up. Now, there's more fonts that have a C with a serif that goes up than there are with a 3 with a flat on the top. So you're trying to identify what's going to give you the most bang for your buck when you're actually trying to find the different fonts. So if I was to look at, let's say, for example, the 3 had a flat top, I've only got 10-15 fonts there. C with a serif pointing up, well, there's rather more of those. There's more like sort of 60 or 70 fonts with that style, but at least it's better than having to go through 1,000 fonts like that. So in this instance, I've still got to work my way down through this list and work out which one I think it's going to be, and it'll take a little bit longer, but at least it's filtered some of the random drivel out that we're not interested in. So when you first do the install, this list here won't be in place because we can't export directories from Font Manager. So the way that you do that is you click Launch and then click Coral Font Manager, and that will open up the actual Coral Font Manager, which has a list of folders up here. So these are my fonts that I've added in, all the folders that I've added in. And the way you add these folders is you click the little button up here and say Add Folder, and then you navigate to Your Disk, Fonts, and then here we have the folders set up. So you can see that I've got a number of different options available to us. Some of them are not particularly useful, so top pointed for an A is there. You can filter it on it if you want, but there are quite a lot of fonts that have a pointy top on an A. Likewise, a flat top is also fairly common. So it's a case of looking at which ones reduce the list that you're searching for the most. So I would just go in and I would say, add this particular font, top pointed, select folder, and now I get top pointed on there, and I've got a list of 243 fonts. Better than 1,000, but not that much better than 1,000, unfortunately. And when I now go to here, I've now got the ability to filter on A's where the top is pointed. The only other thing to add is, as part and parcel of the install, we had to change the way that it identified which version of Coral you were running. So instead of being a radio button choice now, it is a drop down. So when you're doing the install, make sure that you choose the install that's appropriate for your computer. Majority of people are either running Coral 2018 or Coral 2020, and so make sure you choose those in the drop down when you're doing the installation. Other than that, enjoy the new features and give us some feedback, and if you're using, for example, the perspective feature, let us know, and let us know what else you think you might want in there.